This conference will now be recorded.
Bear with me. All right, this is the Board of Selectmen meeting for May 18th, 2021. And I'm going to call the meeting to order pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order concerning imposition on strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. Meetings in the town of Upton are being conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. Today's agenda will include public comment, approval of minutes, a guest presentation, several board discussion items, our regular town manager report, and any closing comments. With that, I will open the floor to any public comment. Okay, hearing none, we will go to the approval of the meeting minutes from April 6th, 13th, 27th, and May 27th.
Well, we haven't had May 27th. Is it just supposed to be April 6th, 13th, and 27th?
I think that, yeah, that's got to be what it is. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not ready with April 6th, but I'm fine with the 13th and the 27th. I think that's supposed to be May 8th is what that
I
date
think it
is
is
supposed to
too,
be.
because it's 8th in the minutes there.
Right, I see the 8th here. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and the only thing I noticed on May 8th is the interest rate's 0.046, and in the minutes is 0.040.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's 0.40 instead of 0.46.
Got
But
it.
I'm good on the 13th, 27th, and May 8th.
And May 8th. Okay. All right, I'll take a motion on those and then we can look at the 6th next time, Sandy.
So I would move that we approve the April 13th and 27th minutes and the May 8th minutes. Maureen Winnell, aye.
I would second the motion. Stephen Mattelli and I.
Brett Simus, aye. Unanimous action. Next, we have a guest presentation with Sarah Adams. So Sarah, welcome. I don't know, Derek, do you want to do an intro or introduce Sarah or? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So Sarah Adams is one of the planners at Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, which you all know that we have contracted with to help us facilitate a community dialogue regarding the municipal vulnerability preparedness program, which received a grant award in large part because of the efforts of Mike Penko, who's also here with us this evening. And Sarah will go into more detail, but they held a number of different sessions through the month of April. And now we're at a point where I asked Sarah to come in, give an update to the Board of Selectmen in advance of a public listening session that'll take place next week. So I'll stop there because I'm sure Sarah has a lot more detail that she wants to provide, and I'll turn it over to Sarah at this point.
All right, thanks, Derek. Can you all hear me okay?
We can.
All right, excellent. I do have a quick presentation, so I'm going to share that with all of you.
Looks good.
All right, you can see it?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, then Derek already touched upon the fact that Upton is well into their MVP planning process. We compiled a draft report based on workshops that were completed in February and March, and we will be presenting those publicly as a public listening session next week. So this is really a crash course of what that presentation will be. I've distilled what would normally be a 1-hour presentation into about 11 minutes. So we're going to go really, really quickly. And if any of you would like to see it in more detail, I encourage you to attend the listening session on the 27th, or to take a look at the draft report, which I believe was linked on your agenda and also on the town website.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay, so just to go over really quickly what the MVP program is, it's a state grant program to support towns in planning for climate resiliency. And the state provides resources for towns to proactively plan and act with the goal of reducing the vulnerability of residents, businesses, infrastructure, and the environment. And designated MVP communities then become certified and eligible for MVP action grant funding. So this is just to show you that Upton is in very good company. Most of the state at this point is designated or undergoing the process of being designated. And of CMRPC's 40 communities, 32 are either designated or currently getting designated. MVP is really community driven and includes participation from a really broad range of local stakeholders. So this process has been led by Upton's 4-member core team, which includes Derek and your town planner, Paul, who's also here tonight, as well as representatives from the Conservation Commission. I think I saw Mike on here as well, and Elder and Social Services. The core team came up with an invitation list for the invitation-only workshops, which were held in February and March via Zoom. And those workshops, we had 23 attendees, which I think some of you attended those workshops. They included local officials, board and commission members, and representatives of businesses and nonprofits in town. And then the next step will be that public listening session on May 27th. That will be open to the public. So that will allow us to get a little bit more feedback on what we found at the workshops and presented in the report outside of that invitation-only workshop. The workshop and objectives were first and foremost to define the extreme weather and climate concerns that were the most relevant to Upton, and to identify current and future vulnerabilities and strengths in town with relation to those climate hazards. And then to develop and prioritize actions and opportunities to make Upton more resilient. At the workshop, we are thinking about these 3 primary topic areas: infrastructure, society, and environment, with relation to the top 4 climate hazards. So one of the very first things that workshop attendees did was identify what they thought the top 4 hazards in Upton were. And they came up with flooding, winter storms, droughts and heat, or droughts and wildfire, and high wind events. During the workshop, we took that big group and broke it out into 3 smaller breakout groups that had 6 to 8 individuals each. And we discussed those 4 focus hazards and the 3 focus areas. And each breakout room used a matrix to record their thoughts that they were having, which I'll show you over the next couple of slides, as well as maps and Upton's hazard mitigation plan. And finally, the other attendees were a really big resource in those rooms. So this is what the workshop matrix looks like. It is how we recorded what people thought of as the strengths and vulnerabilities and what the proposed actions were. We put the top 4 hazards right at the top here, so everyone would have those at the forefront of their brain while we were thinking. And any features were recorded on the left-hand side over here. We also use this to record location, ownership, and whether that feature was a strength or a vulnerability. And then once we'd completed that left-hand side, we use the right-hand side to think about what nature-based solutions or priority actions might address the vulnerabilities that were on the left. This is just an example of what a completed matrix looks like. And at the end of the last day of the workshop, all the groups came back together and a spokesperson for each group gave a report out of their findings. Then following the workshop, CMRPC compiled all of that data from each breakout room and all of the proposed actions into one survey that got sent out to all of the workshop participants. And that helped us identify what the priority areas are and what projects the town might pursue moving forward. So the greatest share of survey participants, 50%, thought that drought was the town's top hazard, but this was really closely followed by the other three. This is probably the most even distribution I've seen in any town. And for infrastructure concerns, workshop attendees noted dams and culverts throughout town, wastewater and septic tank management, water towers and drinking water supply. The railroad came up pretty frequently. There were a lot of concerns about potential environmental hazards tied to the railroad, and also pavement conditions in certain areas of town. For infrastructure strengths, the Upton Center redevelopment came up very frequently. And the local water supply, even though attendees were concerned about the impact of climate change on the town water supply, they did also identify it as a town strength, noting that the West River is a reliable, clean source of drinking water for most of the town, and that Upton doesn't really have to rely on their neighbors for water. Proposed infrastructure actions included assessing flood vulnerability, protecting the water supply, proactive tree trimming, and railroad safety. For societal concerns, workshop attendees noted a lack of affordable housing and public transportation for climate vulnerable residents, such as low income or elderly residents. They also expressed some concerns about townwide emergency preparedness and would like to revisit some emergency preparedness plans, as well as expressing that there was some worry that existing emergency communications might not reach all residents, as there are some areas of town without reliable cell or internet service. And finally, cemeteries came up under this category, as some stakeholders noted that plots might experience flooding in the future due to increased precipitation, and that would really negatively impact the important social and historic features of the two cemeteries in town. For societal strengths, community organizations really came up again and again. A few that were noted were the Upton VFW, the Bloomer Girls, and the Fire and EMS organization. Local social services were also a big strength, bringing up the Council on Aging and the library. And the schools and the youth in the town. Upton is home to the Memorial Elementary School, Nipmuc, and BVT. And a lot of the students, as well as scouts in town, have volunteered on past environmental projects and with the Sustainable Upton Volunteer Organization, and might be leveraged as a resource moving forward as well. Oops, got ahead of myself. Proposed societal actions were reevaluating existing plans and investing in supplies such as generators for shelters, enhancing community preparedness. It seems like some residents were confused about what they should actually do or what they could do to help in the face of a weather-related emergency. So making that a little bit more clear. The emergency preparedness plan is available on the town website, but it seems like folks still aren't completely sure what they should be doing. And then assess resources related to climate vulnerable populations. So that's taking a look at the housing that's available and the transportation options are available to people who might be really at risk for climate related issues. Environmental concerns were tied really heavily to water body health as well as ecological changes. So a lot came up about invasive and nuisance species, as well as insect-borne disease like triple E and Lyme disease. And finally, under this category, fire prevention and vegetation management came up quite a lot. For environmental strengths, agriculture was a big one. Upton has a lot of active farms, which provide town residents with access to locally grown food, which is amazing. And open space and recreation, I think Upton has over 3,000 acres of open space, including the state forest. And that was something that came up at every single table, that residents really love that. And that's a huge strength for the town. The workshop attendees also mentioned several organizations that are active in Upton and play an essential role in preserving and protecting that open space. So this includes groups like the Narragansett Indian Tribal Historic Preservation Trust and the Sudbury Valley Trustees, and many, many more. Proposed environmental actions include continuing to protect new open space, educational outreach around things like water conservation and not planting invasive species, as well as veg management for properties and fire prevention. And then environmental policy, which would involve taking a look at the local regulations to see how supportive of climate resilience they are and if any revisions are needed. In that vein, part of Upton's planning grant was to take a look at the stormwater bylaw and the local wetlands protection bylaw through the lens of low impact development and make some suggestions about revisions that might help support low impact development more. CMRPC has completed the stormwater bylaw review, and I believe Mike Penko, who's on the line, is working on the conservation, on behalf of the Conservation Commission, to do the wetlands regulations review. I won't really get into the weeds on that tonight, but we will definitely talk about that at the public listening session. So next steps for Upton. Number one is that listening session next week. And following the public listening session, we will finalize the draft report with the town to include any comments or suggested edits or anything that came up at that listening session. We'll submit the final report to the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs by the end of June. Likely by early June, we'll be in a position to do that. And Upton will receive their MVP community certification. Following certification, there will be annual reporting required by the core team, but you'll also be eligible to develop and apply for MVP action grants. The next round of action grants is expected in the fall, and it's up to $2 million for an individual community or $5 million for regional projects. They're generally a one-year grant cycle, and there is a match required, but it can be in kind or cash. So now I would like to open it up for questions. I will stop sharing. Oops.
This is great, Sarah. I really appreciate you taking the time to share this with us. I know it's a lot to try to summarize in such a short amount of time, so thank you for that. We appreciate it. One of the questions that I had is around the grants and what types of projects they can be used for. Would you mind just sort of giving us some examples of grant submissions that other communities have put in that have been approved, and what those were for, and what some of the other possibilities are?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are planning grant opportunities. So if the town wanted to maybe do a feasibility study to see where they could implement green infrastructure, that's something that an action grant would fund. It will also fund, so if you have a culvert that's frequently overflowing and not functioning very well, it's one of those really small, kind of old-fashioned, antiquated culverts. One of the things that the MVP program loves is seeing nature-based solutions. So taking a culvert and expanding it so that it's wider and it follows the flow of the stream and it allows for wildlife passage and also doesn't get so overrun when there's a lot of rain. That's the sort of thing that you could absolutely use an action grant to do. Mm-hmm. So anything that was identified as a vulnerability is something that is now on record once we submit the report to the state, and they'll know that the attendees at the workshop said these are the things that we're concerned about and these are the proposed actions, and Upton is really looking at this and taking this feedback to heart and proposing actions to help make the town more resilient.
Mm-hmm. And how often, or what's the funding mechanism for that? So is there a certain amount that goes out and gets distributed each year?
There is. I don't know it off the top of my head. I do know that this grant is getting quite competitive with so many towns certified as MVP communities. I want to say that they had 200 million last year, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's about 100 communities at the max grant. So that's out of 300. So that's pretty competitive. Okay. That definitely helps, and I'm sure a lot of them are smaller grants too. But
Yes.
That's all good to know. And I assume, Derek or Paul, that you guys work with Dennis and with the land stewardship and open space to, identify what some of those top priority projects might be for an action grant. Do we have anything in mind currently?
I'll step in on that one, and I don't want to preempt the process still unfolding, but all those folks you just mentioned were part of the process, or at least part of one or more of the workshops that we had. So at the end of the day, I think we're going to definitely have some strong actionable type projects to consider. At that point, I don't know how many ultimately we identified in this plan, but there'll be more than we can apply for in any given year, certainly.
Great. Appreciate that. Maureen, Steve, questions, comments?
Oh, I had the same question that you had, Brett, on what the action grants could be used for. And Sarah, good job on that.
Yeah, would there be anyone in particular that you could share with us that recently a neighboring community may have applied for and received?
Yeah, I will say Uxbridge has done a lot with this program, so they have a lot of great information available on their website. We partnered with them and with Fuss and O'Neill to do a water infrastructure study. So they looked at all the culverts and the dams and the bridges in town and really assessed the vulnerability of them, and also took a look at some really preliminary costs for what it would take to upgrade those items with more green infrastructure, so they were more nature-based and more climate resilient. I have also done a bylaw review for them similar to the exercise that Upton is already undertaking. So you're a little ahead of the curve because you used your planning grant money to do some bylaw revisions as opposed to using an action grant. Some towns have also done sort of regional workshops to help get folks together and get some best practices and hear about what's been done. I know Auburn has done something like that, and Uxbridge hosted a mosquito control workshop over the summer. I'm not sure if anyone from Upton was involved in that or attended that, but they had speakers from all over the state about more nature-based kind of mosquito control as opposed to spraying pesticides and that sort of thing, the different techniques that you can use to get mosquito populations under control in town.
Yeah, and I would add that one of our neighbors, the town of Millbury, they received an action grant. I think it was about $800,000, where they were able to reconstruct their downtown sidewalks so that they were more permeable. So instead of the rainwater flowing through the stormwater system, it actually infiltrated the sidewalks to create, to recharge the aquifer in that area. So that's one of the grants that I thought was the most interesting came out of this MVP process.
Yeah, Derek's absolutely right. And part of that was also doing a lot of plantings in the islands and kind of the center of the traffic circles. Millbury has had some really great projects. I know Belchertown has a rainwater collection system that they installed at, I believe, one of their schools, that the state really liked that project and I think would like to see things in that vein. So that's another example of an action grant that was funded.
Awesome. Great. Very good. Very good. Well, again, it's a lot of work by a lot of people and a lot of hours spent focusing on this. So thanks to you guys for all heading this up, for your participation and leadership, and obviously to everybody that participated in the forums and all the sessions. So this is great. I think it'll be great for the community anytime we can take advantage of this type of insight and expertise and then apply it to the enhancement of the community. And that's obviously something that's a worthwhile endeavor. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you all very much for having me. I'm going to put my email in the chat. If any of you have any questions, you can reach out, or if any of you would like the information about the listening session next week, definitely shoot me an email and I can get you the Zoom information for that.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Very good, thanks.
Thank you.
Everyone, have a good night.
You.
Good.
So next up, we have the Kiwanis Beach signage. Andrew, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, great, thank you. I think I pretty much explained it in the kind of the attached letter there, but essentially what we're looking to do is just sort of update just the signage down at the beach. Some of it is just old signs that are kind of rusty and just don't look nice and need to be updated just for that reason. Others is that we are dealing with like the main beach rule sign. If anybody's been down there right when you first park, there's our beach rule sign. And then under that beach rule sign, I think is a no smoking sign. And then to the left of that or to the right of that is a don't feed the geese sign. And then on the post, the handicap parking post next to it is a thing about not having dogs on the beach. So just over the course of the last, probably like 8 or 9 years now, new rules have been added. And we're kind of getting this, I think we're kind of getting, in my opinion, we're getting a bit of a sign overload. Nobody's reading 4 or 5 signs. So this is just sort of a clean it up, make it look nice, and also sort of consolidate the message so that somebody can stop, read one sign, and kind of get the rundown of everything. There's, I think, 4 signs that are in this packet here that are attached. The first sign that's here is going to be like right at the entrance. And I apologize, I'm still waiting for some artwork that's going to go on this sign. But it's essentially, it's a map of the facility showing you where to park, showing you where soccer fields are, tennis courts, all of that. I don't know if anybody has been to other facilities for, especially youth sports and stuff like that. But going to other facilities for my son, I can tell you that it's one of the greatest things ever when you pull into a spot and you see a sign telling you exactly what the thing you're looking for, like where it's located within the facility. And a lot of our facility is not really visible from the parking area, but also this would help clarify that people aren't supposed to drive up to the soccer field. That's just the handicap accessible parking going up the access road. So this would help them see that, you park here and the field's over there, that kind of information. And then the next one is some of these signs that we have, 2 or 3 signs kind of tacked around. The don't feed the wildlife, the no smoking and dispose of trash are all some of those areas. We have 3 signs kind of nailed to a tree. So this is sort of trying to minimize, again, just the quantity of signs while consolidating the message. You'll notice on both of these signs so far, we've added the security cameras in use. The bulk of the facility is covered by security camera and is monitored by the police station. So if we can stop people from doing stupid stuff because they know they're on camera, then so much the better. I'd rather stop them than try to catch them after the fact. So just sort of putting that out there so people are aware that there is security cameras on the property. And this sign here would be, this is your standard, like, like whatever size, like, 1 foot by 15 inch, or, your standard, like kind of what you see for like a no parking on the side of the road, like that size sign. The first one would be a bigger sign right when you first come in. The next sign on here is the beach rules sign. And again, this is the consolidation of multiple signs right at the entrance, or right at the entrance of the beach portion. So after you've parked, the walkway right there where the rules currently are posted, this would be consolidating all those various signs into one. And some things like there are some things that have sort of been added, such as the be courteous of other patrons. That deals with volume levels and space use and the activities that you're doing. There's been some different, kind of different methods of trying to communicate this information. People playing music significantly louder than it should be for a public beach, or throwing a frisbee around where they're throwing it over multiple groups of people. So this is sort of that catch-all of, be polite to others. Everything else is pretty much the same rules that are currently posted. Again, adding the security cameras and usage. So this would just be a straight replacement for the sign that's there. I would also be looking to This would be the only thing I'd be adding for a sign separately, or signpost wise, would be looking to put this on the other side of the beach. Again, if you go down to the beach, you know, we got the wooden fence right between the parking lot and the grass that leads to the sand. People who park kind of towards the entrance of the facility, the gatehouse side of it, oftentimes will enter on the grass by that fence, meaning they don't go in the main entrance, what we would view as the main entrance to the beach, so they don't get to these rules. So we would just put it right there, and I think we would just be on the fence post itself. We wouldn't be digging in a new post. And then the very last one is just sort of this is again a replacement of a sign that we currently have. That, if you'll remember, we've got an Eagle Scout project that's going on to replace the flagpole. This current sign is in that flagpole area, needs to be replaced anyway. The posts have shifted, so the sign is all bent up. But this would be the lifeguard off duty and lifeguard on duty sort of signs. The lifeguard off duty basically gets posted permanently year round, and the lifeguard on duty, the lifeguards hang over the off duty sign, so it covers the off duty when they're actually there. That's really kind of the long and short of it. We're just trying to, like I said, kind of update it, make the signs as clear as possible, consolidate the message, and also kind of within this, we are looking to add a small solar powered light to the new sign at the end of the road. Just a small sort of single bulb light up the light up the light at the end of the road, sort of a thing. That's partially to help with fall sports. Sometimes parents are going to pick up kids, or some of the games sometimes go into the time period where the signs, it's starting to get dark. So just to try to help people find the facility. But again, it would be a very small single bulb solar light, nothing obtrusive or anything like that. So
Great, thank you.
Oh yeah, and recreation is going to pay for all the signs and stuff. We're not looking for money or anything, just permission to put them up.
This is helpful. I think it'll be great to obviously get some new signs up. It's always good for people to understand what's there and what we can do. I mean, I'm not going to try to redesign your signs. I'm not a fan of the surveillance elements of the signs. For me, that's just an aesthetic in the town where I don't want to. I don't like the notion of people feeling overly surveyed, so to speak. And so I understand that there's an intent to prevent issues before they happen. So I totally get and appreciate that. But I think that we're putting in a solution that affects a very, very, very small number of people that would actually do anything dangerous or destructive, and putting that sign in front of everybody that drives to the beach now feeling like they're on camera no matter what they're doing, particularly on a beach where you have some expectation of privacy, I would think. But other than that, these all look great. Maureen, Steve, I don't know what your thoughts are, comments, questions.
I agree that the signs should be replaced. Have you touched base with the zoning enforcement officer, Pat Roach, at all? I'm sure you'll approve them where they're only replacements.
Yeah, so I have not yet, as far as any kind of permitting or anything goes. I'm basically seeking the permission first, and then I'll reach out to Pat to find out what he would like for permits in terms of this. Again, as you said, it is just a straight replacement of what's there. I was in touch with Chief Bradley regarding the terminology on the security cameras. There was some talk of whether we wanted it to, point out that, it's a 24-hour surveillance or what, or whatever. So I asked Chief Bradley basically what's the language you would like to see on the signs. So that is the language that, that he said he was comfortable with. And I'm obviously open to making some modifications if you think that's if an issue. Perhaps just putting it on the first sign when you first enter that the premises are covered by security cameras. I will also put out there that we do see, I think the cameras get used more when there's like a hit and run sort of situation in the parking lot. somebody backs into another car and drives away. I probably get 2 or 3 of those every year. And I have also dealt with people who told me about it, but they told me about it after the cameras cover about 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how much activity there is. And they've told me about it after the cameras are too late to, because they didn't know there were cameras that possibly could have dealt with the insurance damage and stuff like that. So, I think that's part of it too. But again, absolutely willing to change to whatever you deem, appropriate for that area.
Yeah. Steve?
Nope, they look fine to me. I don't really have any suggestions. Other than, I guess you said replaced by artwork. You see that first sign being kind of like a kiosk where it'll have a kind of layout of where all the different items are at the park. Is that how you see that?
Yeah.
Kinda
So
like a trail
yes.
map.
Yeah, I put the kind of the Google overhead, Google Maps overhead view, because it's basically going to be a graphics version of what you see there. So it'll be something that goes with the style of the sign, but would be I'm not an artist, so putting clip art together, not a problem, but I failed to make this look good several times in a row, so I enlisted some help. Somebody's volunteering to draw it for me. So
That's awesome. Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
No, that's all I was gonna say. That's fine. Looks good to me.
I love the idea of having that sort of guide, because there's so much there that you don't necessarily see if you just come in by the gatehouse. So knowing that those, basketball courts, pickleball courts, tennis courts, fields is a really cool thing to have there. And I wonder, this is totally, your specialty, Andrew, in terms of people navigating the upper field now with that parking that's been opening up there, and if that's included or not, or how you address that. But I love the idea, and it also makes me wonder, could people end up in that top? I don't think they would, like, GPS doesn't take you to that cider mill access point. I'm just wondering if someone's trying to get to the beach and they end up up there, are they going to feel like they don't know where they're going? And should we put that sort of lay of the land map up there, so if someone ends up there and they're trying to get to the beach, they realize that they're in the wrong spot? But just a thought.
yeah, I don't think anybody would accidentally end up there, because there's not an address for that. Like I don't even know where to tell you to navigate to get to the upper one per se. The address for the upper parking lot is still technically 99 Kiwanis Beach Road, because it's still the same facility.
Yeah.
Which is probably something else to address, is we probably should figure out a way to navigate people up there. I was planning on putting on, in that, where the parking lot would be on the map, putting a note, that, upper access for sporting events,
something like that,
and be reached off of Cider Mill. And
yeah. Cool. Great. I love the design. I love the colors. Obviously, you put a lot of time and effort into this, and I love the updated rules too. Those are always good things to reinforce with folks and update based on how people are behaving. So that's awesome. I'm good. Oh, the light. Any concerns about the light? Obviously, the only concern there is neighbors, right? If someone says, "Hey, there's a light shining in my window when I'm trying to go to sleep," but obviously, from my perspective, just manage it and know that if it's just a little solar light, if it creates any kind of problem, just take it down.
Yeah, that would be the idea. Is it would be a cheap enough thing that if somebody complains, we would just, eat the $20 loss and take the light off and use it elsewhere.
Exactly. Okay, cool. I'll take a motion.
I move that we approve the replacement of the signage at Kiwanis Beach. Maureen Winnell, aye.
I second the motion. Stephen Mattellion, aye.
Brett Simus, aye. Unanimous action. Thank you, Andrew, for all your work.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have the scholarship awards. So I think that the way that we handle this is we all have the list. We have the numbers of the applicants 1 through 10. Do we want to just go through the list and sort of say what each one of us for lack of a better word, nominated that person for? Or do we want to just start with the two people that we, the numbers that we thought we would sort of take out of consideration first? Or what do you want to do? Barring any input, we'll just go 1 through 10 and tell us if you think 500, 200, or consider at the end.
Yeah, I don't know. Maureen, do you have thoughts on that? Do you want to start by who we think we eliminate and then talk about the dollar figure, or do you want to go down the names? What are your thoughts?
I think we go with the two to be eliminated.
So I was looking at a no on 6 and a no on 8.
I've got mine out of order, but
The order is, I don't know if it's going to be helpful. The one that they're in the order that they show in the 48 pages of the PDF, and they're also, Sandy included a list of 1 through 10 in that same email that just has the names and the numbers, like just 1 through 10 and the names.
okay.
If you want to try to do like initials, we can do that, I guess.
I had number 1 and 9 were the two I had eliminated. So
Oh,
it's kind of wide open on criteria, you know, even the way the
maybe
policy
this.
is written is pretty ambiguous, and
Yep.
it favors those who are kind of entering public service, and it's really a stretch to see, other than, I guess it would be candidate number 4, I think is really the only one that seems to be following in those footsteps.
Yep. So I had 4 as a 500.
I would go with 4 as a 500.
All right. So 1 down.
Yep, I'm good with that.
I had number 10 as a 500.
I did as well. Pretty impressive resume and outstanding university that person is attending. So I had them as a 500 as well.
I could go with number 10 as a 500.
Okay, 2 down. I had 2 as a 500.
Yes, I did as well.
Same here.
All right, 3 down. I had 4 as a 500, or I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3 as a 500.
I was going to say number 5. I had number 5 as a 500.
Yep, we agreed to that. I'm so sorry. 1, 2, I got my numbers and my 5s. All right, so I'm looking at 1, 2. Did we say 3 was a 500? I'd like 3 as a 500.
I had 3 as a 200, but it's Maureen, you can be the tiebreaker on that.
I think I'd go 2 as a 500.
Okay, 500 on that.
All right, so that's 4. So that was a yes, a yes, a yes. Did you guys have, so those were the sort of ones where I was like, yep, these feel like they're definitely 5s to me. Are there ones that you guys looked at and said, oh yeah, this is definitely a 5?
You know, they were so closely matched. I mean, I had candidate number 5 in there as well.
Yep,
Um,
yep, I did too.
You know, high GPA, and I think field of study was, I thought, interesting. But
Right.
again, are we out of 500 yet, or is that the last one?
We do 6 5s and 2
6 5s.
So we've got 2 more 5s. So if we did 5, candidate number 5 at 500, we'd have 1 more 500 and 2 more 200s. So I'm good with giving candidate $500.
Okay.
Same here.
How about number candidate 7? Anybody have candidate 7?
I had 7 in for 2, but again, you know, you guys know, you went through the same process I did. Like, this is really, they're all really, really strong candidates, you know. So 2 or 5 is great.
In fact, if you revisit it after you've left the paper for a few minutes, you kind of rethink what you have. So 3 through 7 are pretty close.
Yep.
So we were just discussing number 7, right?
Yeah, number 7.
Yeah, candidate 7. Maureen, what did you think on that one?
Well, I would go with the 2.
Okay, you okay with 2 on that one, Steve?
Yep, that's fine.
All right. So we've got 1, 5, and 1, 2 left. So maybe number 9. I had candidate 9 as a 500, but I also had number 1. I had as a 200, but I think somebody said a no on 1. So what do you guys think on 9?
Is it 200?
Number 9 was number 9 and number 1 were my no's. And
No's.
the only one I have left, I'm looking at number 6. I think would be my last. Is that a 200 that's left?
We have 1 500 and 1 200.
Okay. Maureen, out of those candidates, let's just say number 6 and number
9.
9. So say 6 and 9. Do you have a preference on one over the other? And if so, for how many dollars?
9, I'd probably go with the 200, and 6, I'd go with the 500.
I was a no on 6.
Yeah,
Yes. And I think it was partially because of the essay. But
oh, yeah.
but again, that's, let's see. So Steve, you were a no on 2. No. Yeah, so I think the 4 we have remaining, Steve, I was a no on 2 and you were a no on 2. So Maureen, of between number 1, 6, 8, and 9, did you have any strong feelings on any of those? Otherwise, we can just sort of pick 2 and go with it.
I think
1, I would go with the 2.
Okay, and then
number 1.
Derek, Steve, you like 6, right? So what if we did 200 for 1 and 5 for 6? Would you be okay with that?
Yep, that would be fine.
That would be good.
Does that work for you, Maureen?
Yep.
So
Okay.
200 for candidate number 1.
Yep. 500 for candidate 2,
2.
3, 4, 5, and 6. 200 for 7. 8 and 9, unfortunately, were not granted, and candidate 10 was 500.
Candidate 10 was 500. Yes.
Yes,
Okay. So did we miss?
that's 8, right?
Yeah. So I'm missing. My notes are a little
Yeah.
haphazard here. Is it number candidate 9 then that was eliminated?
Yep.
Yes, and 10.
Yep. 8 and 9 were no's. I had 8 as a no. You had 9 as a no, Steve.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
And again, I think, it goes without saying that this is, as I was reading through these, I was like, this is one of the harder things I do as a selectman. Like all these students,
There is.
just the fact that they're here and they're applying and they're taking the initiative, and some of them have such extraordinary sort of resumes and activities and all that. It's nice to see such a great group of students in the community. So it's heartening for sure, and it's not easy to make these kinds of decisions.
Yeah.
Derek, do we need a motion or?
Yeah, so you need to make a motion for the 6 applicants for $500 to come from the Ristine B Trust Fund. We still have over $600,000 remaining in that account. And then a motion for the 2 applicants under the Ramsey Scholarship Fund for $200, which has an account balance of approximately $6,600.
Okay.
Just trying to get the numbers correct. Maureen, are your notes better than mine? If we have to talk, we have to actually make the motion based on the candidate number, correct?
Yeah, I have good notes, but am I allowed to make a motion? No. Derek's like, nope, there's a reason you never make a motion.
If you want, I can read these back to you for scholarships for 500. They would be applicants number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10.
Okay.
That is again under the Ristine B Trust.
Okay. I have that, Maureen. Did you want to make the motion or would you rather I? Okay.
He's on mute. That's going to be a you, Steve.
All right. That's what I was thinking. All right. I make a motion that we award $500 scholarships out of the Northwood Ristine B Fund to candidates numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and candidate 10. Stephen Mattelli, aye.
Second, Maureen Dwinell, aye.
Brett Simus, aye. Unanimous action. And then we have 1 and 7 for 200 from Ramsey.
Is it Ramsey and Bates or is it just the Ramsey?
One's Ramsey and one's Bates, I thought.
Okay.
It's the Ramsey Scholarship Fund.
Okay. And that was numbers 1 and 7, you said, right?
Right.
Maureen, did you want to do this one?
It doesn't matter which, well, I would make a motion that we approve scholarship for the Gary Bates Scholarship Fund for $200. Maureen Dwinell, aye.
I'll amend that to candidate number 1. Stephen
One, yeah.
Mattelli, Stephen Mattelli, second the motion, aye.
Brett Simus,
And I make a motion that we approve a scholarship for $200 out of the Ramsey Trust Fund. Maureen Dwinell, aye.
What number is that one? 7, is it?
7.
Second the motion, Stephen Mattelli, aye.
Brett Simus, aye. Unanimous action. We have the 911 dispatch intermunicipal agreement. Is that you, Derek?
Okay. So what is before you this evening is a second 3-year extension. That was from the original intermunicipal agreement dating back to 2015 with the town of Hopedale. As you all know, our police department communications division provides 911 dispatch services to the town of Hopedale through this IMA. This 3-year contract extension is effective for FY22, 23, and 24. There is no monetary change to this 3-year contract. meaning that the previous contract remains as is. Pending any questions, that's all I have for this IRA.
Safe to assume our cost for providing that service is the same?
Our costs are the same, but as you know, through the efforts of Chief Bradley and the Hopedale Police Chief, we've been able to increase our grant allocation by almost 50% over the past two grant cycles.
Yeah.
And for those reasons alone, we've been able to overcompensate for any costs incurred through this agreement. If we were to do this on our own without the partnership of Hopedale, we would lose close to $300,000 worth of grant dollars through the 911 program.
Yeah, no, this is a great program and a great partnership. So I think this is great. Thank you. Steve?
Are we able to share what we received from Hopedale, or is that privacy for the contract?
I can get that for you. If you give me a few minutes, I can look that up. I want to say it's close to $500,000, but bear with me.
We could probably motion it maybe while Derek's looking for that. Or Maureen, did you have any questions? I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. No, I think it's a good thing to do.
I'm good.
And good. I'll make a motion that we approve the 911 dispatch intermunicipal agreement with the town of Hopedale for a 3-year extension for 22, 23, and 24. Maureen will now,
Second the motion, Stephen Mattelli and I.
Brett Simus, aye. Unanimous action. We have a motion to appoint an associate planning board member. And I'm wondering if is Bill on the phone or here?
I don't believe so. While we wait for that, Steve, to your question, in the chief's budget, he had budgeted $23,500 from the town of Hopedale.
What was the number again?
$23,500.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
So Bill Tessmer was unanimously supported by the planning board. He's a current member, associate member of the planning board. So this is a reappointment. They support it unanimously. So I'm certainly comfortable with Bill's involvement and to support him.
Yes, I believe I know him from town. He's been on the board for quite some time in this capacity. So I'm fine with this appointment.
I would agree with this appointment.
And I'll take a motion.
I'll move that we appoint William Tessmer to the planning board. Maureen Gwinnell, aye.
I would second the motion, Stephen Mattelli and I.
Brett Simus, aye. Unanimous action. And next up, we have the Men's Club request for funding. I don't see.
So Brad,
Oh, hello.
yeah, so Brad DiDio, I think he says how it says that name. He was the applicant on behalf of the men's club. Honestly, I don't know why he's not in attendance. I don't know if he received notification about this evening's meeting. But as you know, the men's club is seeking support for $6,000 for the August 21st fireworks festival. If you'd like to delay it until our next meeting on June 1st, I believe it would still give them ample time for their planning purposes.
And just, I mean, I see the letter. I guess my one big question is, remind me of the account that we funded this out of and what the balance is?
Give me a second. So this would come under,
This is your quiz day, Derek.
I know, a good thing I have the general ledger pulled up. So this would come under,
That was one of the things I need to get as an updated copy of that. It seems like we expend some money out of those funds and then, I'm always curious what we're left with. Is that
Right.
beautification, Derek? I can't remember now.
it wouldn't be beautification, no. It would be under the one we've been spending a lot of money from would be for for any municipal purpose, the Board of Selectmen, for any municipal purpose. Which I'm looking, I believe that may be the William Knowlton Trust. I'm looking at it right now. And I'm looking at a report that's dated March 21st. Honestly, we have appropriated some money out of that as of late. For example, the ADA transition plan. But when I look at the balance right now, because we haven't received any invoices, I don't trust the balance. The balance is telling me it's $70,000, but I know that we haven't expended any dollars because the work hasn't been complete. For example, $30,000, actually $31,000 for the ADA transition plan. So if I were to give you an educated guess, I would say that account is closer to $25,000, which is certainly the lowest it has been in my 4.5 years here in town.
So I think, and I guess the reason I ask is, I mean, certainly I want to support this, right? This is probably the, if not, I think it's one of the biggest events that happens in the community every year. We've been helping support it, through these trust fund money that the Knowltons and other benefactors have provided to the community for these types of things. So I think it's something that we want to do. I just want to make sure that, ideally we would be able to do this from an account that we can sustain it year after year, instead of wondering every year whether or not we can support it. So, maybe what we can do, Derek, between now and the next meeting is look for alternative trusts that we could use to fund something like this. But Steve, Maureen, obviously I want, it's open discussion, of course. That was just my thought.
Well, yeah, I would like to put it off until the next meeting until we find out the information that you're looking for. And what they're going to be doing during, at the meeting. I just, he's will explain it, maybe he hasn't been informed. So we should maybe get a hold of Brad, see if we can make it the next meeting and then look at the different trust funds that we have.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. I agree, in light of, we're not having a parade. It seems for last year and this year, no Memorial Day parade. The carnival is going to be gone. So this is really, really it's going to be the only real community event right now that we have outside of what RecCom does, concerts and whatnot that they hold. So this will be really, it's our biggest community event, I would say, at this point in time. That I can think of. So, we're in agreement that we want to help fund it. It's just a matter of where. So maybe moving forward, we can look at those other trust funds and at least make a mental note to keep this one, maybe not deplete this one quite so much so that we can make sure that we have the ability to sustain this event, and fund it continuously. So That sounds good. And if Mr. DiDio can come on next meeting, that'd be great. Or Didio, I think it's pronounced.
Okay. Very good. We will do that. Next, we have the building committee vacancy. Derek, do you want to give us a little context on this?
Sure. So I believe at our last meeting, I had reported that and you had accepted a resignation by a previous former building committee member who had to resign. And so it was the thought of the board at the time to just hold off on filling that vacancy until a later date. And so I guess I'm trying to determine, the chairman from the building committee certainly wants to fill this vacancy as soon as possible. I just want to bring a couple of things to light. The entire building committee will be up for reappointment for effective June 1st. So I guess the question really lies, do we want to advertise this vacancy along with seeking reappointment requests from the sitting 6 members? That'll help us determine, moving forward, who's going to be on the building committee after June 30th, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel strongly. I think that whatever we think will solicit the most interest is what we should do. So if sort of advertising it on its own as a separate opportunity, then great. If we want to do it when we post everything, all the vacancies, then we can do that. I don't know, Steve or Maureen, how you guys feel.
I think we could wait until we do all the appointments and then just advertise that way.
Yeah, that sounds fine with me.
Okay, good. That works for me.
We'll just repost all vacancies, and if folks are interested, they would then have to go to our website, which we'll certainly put a link on the homepage, which we already have done once, but just to re-advertise it so our folks can go peruse through all the vacancies, this one be included, to determine whether, anyone that they'd be interested in. And then we would just take it as a slate, some part in the middle part of June, probably the second meeting in June would be my idea, I guess.
Perfect. Okay. Sounds good. Town manager update.
Okay, so I'm going to hold off talking a little bit about remote participation towards the end of my discussion, but just giving you some public works updates. As you know, you probably have seen that street sweepers are out there. They're in the second week of street sweeping, and we'll continue that for another week. After that, once the streets are cleaned, then we'll start catch basin cleaning for about 2 weeks. When you go down Hopkinton Road and High Street, you probably have noticed that the road has changed dramatically. The milling has been complete. They're towards the end of the full depth reclamation on the lower part of the phase 1 tip project. And they're hoping to start paving the base coat this Friday. But worst case scenario, they do believe they will start the following Monday, so after the weekend. They believe that it's going to be a 2 to 3 day period just to lay the base coat. The finished top coat probably will not get laid until the early to mid part of the fall. So we'll at least have a base coat down through the summer months. But we don't expect any raised structures, so we don't expect any road hazards during the summer month period. In addition to that, you probably have noticed that the phase 2 component has already started on the Hopkins Ave north side. So that, that's always underway, and we are still on track to complete phase 2 sometime during the construction period in 2022. So what we originally thought 5 years ago to be a 2 construction season project has really amounted to be a 3 season construction project. And we knew that going into groundbreaking last year. Additionally, we do plan on doing a sewer lining on Warren Street. Once that is complete, then we certainly plan on having an open discussion with the board as to what the intentions are for the closeoff section of Warren Street. There have been a lot of discussions of removing the asphalt, putting up wooden barriers, and then lumen seeding what would then be a hill, a grassy hill. So once that's complete, we'll seek better direction from the board as to what you'd like the final visual on Warren Street to look like. Moving on to the Board of Health, as you know, the town of Uxbridge has been hosting 4 days a week a COVID clinic, and Upton having the 5th day at Nipmuc High School. That's going to be reduced in the next week or so down to just 3 days a week. But in an effort to encourage the new population of ages 12 to 15 years old to come and get vaccinated, they will be offering an array of food trucks down in Uxbridge. So after you get vaccinated, you can have your choice of one of the food trucks to grab something to eat. Again, a way to incentivize those individuals to get vaccinated. May 22nd, May 29th, and June 12th will be the 3 last and remaining COVID clinics here in Upton, and those will be held from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So as you have heard on the news, that the demand for the vaccine has reduced dramatically, and you're starting to see a drawdown on the number of public clinics and a move to start to insert this vaccine into more traditional healthcare settings like hospitals and PCPs. Hazardous Waste Day, although this is real early, I'll just put it out there now. Hazardous Waste Day and Shredding Day will be held at the DPW on August 28th. I'm now on the dock. And last, I wanted to talk a little bit about the most recent announcement by Governor Baker. So as you all know, effective May 29th, the state has decided to lift all COVID restrictions. There will be some exceptions. We're still waiting to see what those exceptions are. However, with the state of emergency being lifted and the restriction on June 15th, the state of emergency will be lifted on May 29th, the various restrictions will be lifted. From what I have been told as of today, we will no longer be allowed to have remote participation effective May 30th. So there's going to be more information that's going to come from this. But as it stands right now, we're trending in the direction that on June 1st, we will have to reconvene in person here in Town Hall. At that time, again, hopefully I'll have more information. Kelly and I had a conversation today. There is a statute that allows for remote participation that can only be enacted by the Board of Selectmen. Pre-COVID, it had been brought to the attention of the Board of Selectmen to consider enacting this statute. The Board of Selectmen has traditionally rejected it. But given, I guess I would say, the experience that we've had with virtual meetings, it's something this board may want to reconsider and consider some hybrid models. And the reason why I wanted to talk a little bit about this tonight is because through the efforts of Kelly and others, we've been able to transform our 2 major conference rooms to allow for in-person participation and virtual participation collectively. So meaning that we could be sitting in Little Town Hall hosting a meeting while all of our residents are sitting at home participating like they are today. So it's something that we've been spending the last 3 months on engineering so that we have that ability to offer what we say is a hybrid model. But in order to do that, again, we're going to have to see what comes out of the governor's office and whether or not this board chooses to continue some type of virtual meeting platform. So more to come on that, but I wanted to bring that up this evening because this is breaking news as of yesterday. So that may prompt some discussion this evening. And then last, before I end, we have a steering committee that was originally the Community Center Feasibility Committee, and then there was appointments made last summer to be the Community Center Steering Committee, which was made up of COA members, library trustees, and I think a member from the VFW. I'd like the board to reconsider reappointing that committee effective June 1st. Now that the community center has passed, there are a number of policies that have to be developed regarding the use of the building, the space, the shared space with the VFW, and so on and so forth. And this group was already a really strong mix of COA, library trustees, and VFW. So this may be another committee that I'm asking the board to consider to put out there for advertisement for a potential appointment effective July 1st. Pending any questions, that's all I have for this evening.
That's great. Would we want to rename that committee or give it a new name, or have you thought about that?
I asked the question why we called it the steering committee, and I think that was just the name that was given last year. But yeah, absolutely. If we can come up with a committee name that's more fitting, I think we should consider that.
Okay. Great. I think that, the updates are great. Seeing all the work on Hopkinton Road is great. Obviously traffic delays and dust and all those normal things that go along with construction are par for the course. I haven't been hearing anything, outside the bounds of what we would expect regarding that work. So it's good to hear that they'll get some of that paving done over the next week or so. I think that'll go a long way towards quelling any anxiety people have with the dust and sort of the current state, which is unavoidable. So I think that's great. Makes perfect sense to have a group of people look closely at and focus on some of the policies, procedure, use policies, et cetera, for the new community center. So I'm totally fine with that. Maureen, Steve, anything from your perspective?
No, I'm totally fine with that. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, it would just seem a little early. It seems like we have a lot of committee work, and it just seems like it'd be a little bit early to form that committee July 1st. I mean, you have a year and a half construction period of time that you think you're going to encounter. It just, to me, it would seem a little early to enact a committee like that.
Well, wouldn't a committee like that work along with the construction process in order to determine what uses should be made or how it should be configured while it's in the process of being constructed, instead of waiting until it's just constructed and then decide how you're going to use the space?
And I think it's also just a function of continuing the momentum too, and people's interest and energy have been focused on getting that work done. So if they're interested and able to continue that work in a continuous way, then I think sometimes that's more productive than fits and starts. But it certainly is a long time. But sometimes having more time is better than having less time when you're doing these kinds of things. Is you often run into unexpected issues, questions, concerns, scenarios, use cases, etc. So, I don't necessarily know that that's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at it at, you're going to have those summer months. You're going to ask committees to meet. You've already got basically a design, a blueprint, and a floor plan that you've introduced to the residents in town. It's kind of a, I understand that there's going to be policies to be enacted, but I'm not sure that's going to have anything to do with the construction process. So that's the only thing I would suggest is, we certainly hold off till fall. But again, that's a discussion. We'll have to have that as a separate discussion, I imagine.
Yeah, and maybe Derek, what we could do is sort of just come up with a clear charge for what that group would do, and I think that might help the conversation, because I agree with Steve. It's not right. It's got nothing to do with the construction. It's got nothing to do with the design, the build, the engineering, the architects, the right? It's none of that. So we want to be very clear about if we've got this many people spending time doing something, we should be very clear about exactly what their objective is. So I think if we do that, Derek, then we'll be in a better position to have the conversation.
I can work with Matthew, the library director, and draft probably a more fitting name for the committee and a set of goals and objectives for the committee.
Okay, perfect. Anything else, Steve or Maureen, for Derek?
I have nothing else.
Nothing from me.
All right. Any closing comments before we adjourn?
Hi, I'd like to step in and I apologize when Brett Seamus was asking for public comments at the beginning of the meeting. You were cutting out a little bit and I didn't figure out that that's what you were doing till after you had moved on. So I'm asking for the okay to just bring up a topic that I was hoping to bring up at the beginning of the meeting, but didn't manage to do that. Would that be okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I have been part of a group who is looking at, we're calling it the Mosquito Control Task Force, and we are looking at options so that we can opt out of the state spraying. We would also like to maybe consider some possibilities that would be an alternative to the regional control mosquito control project. But right now we're in the process of developing a mission statement, and we hope to come before the board with a final draft of that, and wanted to just make you aware that this is what we're doing. And if you have any thoughts or input, we welcome that, and just wanted you to be in the loop. We didn't want you to wonder what what this little group was doing. And there are other members who I've been meeting with on this meeting, and if anybody else has anything they'd like to add, this would be the time to do it. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know that we hope to meet with you in June with something more formal, and in the hopes of being able to form a task force that you would appoint and authorize.
That's great. Yeah, great. Thank you for the heads up. It's always nice and appreciated to understand what's going on in the community so that we can advocate, help, discuss, or what have you. So that's great. Derek, we'll just work together with Marcella and the group, and we should probably have the Board of Health participate or invite the Board of Health so that we can have one discussion with the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Health, and Marcella and the team that she's working with.
Great. What I'll do is forward you a draft of our mission statement and invite the Board of Health to the whatever meeting that we schedule to discuss it with you, and then we can go from there.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Any other closing comments? Steve?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment. It's really a criticism, and I'm not sure how the oversight was made, but it appears that in our budget presentation at the annual town meeting that we did not include our projected budgeted wages, which has always been a staple part of our budget presentation. It's paramount to transparency to the taxpayer, and to preclude that or eliminate that information is a bad oversight. I mean, I think we've got to take responsibility for that as a Board of Selectmen. That's as far back as you can go. You go back 50 years and look at the budget presentation, it's in there. So I don't know how it was eliminated this year, but we can do better than that, I feel, with the level of professionalism and expertise we have at Town Hall. I don't know how that was overlooked.
Go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, sure. So to Selectman Matarian's point, that decision was voted on by the Finance Committee during the budget discussions going back to 2020. In fact, they had, let me take a step back. So as you all know, the report that's submitted to town meeting is not a Board of Selectmen report, it's the Finance Committee report, which is coupled with the Board of Selectmen's town meeting warrant. So there are two different functions. Board of Selectmen is responsible for the warrant. The Finance Committee is responsible for the final recommendation to town meeting. And last year, they voted to not include the wages for FY22. And in fact, they had put a note in the FY21 recommendation report that this would be the last year that they would submit a wages report. There were some new members, the Finance Committee, actually one new member who, to Steve's point, brought this up as kind of an old tradition and why we weren't doing it. Why didn't we do it this year? And the Finance Committee stood firm on their previous decision a year ago. And they don't have any intentions on including that in the future, just for everyone's edification. Steve, I would say that it was no one's doing in town hall, but it's rather a function of the Finance Committee.
So when we approve the budget, and we approve when department heads come before us, is that merely a formality? Is that what this really is boiling down to? Is the Board of Selectmen eliminated from having any input into the budget? Because it sure sounds like it. I mean, we sit through a lot of hours of budget, so I mean, if we're just wasting our time and FinCom's gonna just dash and slash information from the taxpayer, then it's, foolhardy for me to sit in at these meetings, at least on the budgetary side of things.
So if we look at our form of government, we have, I would say, half a dozen elected bodies, Board of Selectmen being one. All according to the bylaw, all elected bodies submit their budgets to the Finance Committee for review. So if you look at our structure, the Board of Selectmen has multiple departments that report under the Board of Selectmen, which is why this body reviews fire, police, DPW, and does not review the library trustees, and does not review the Board of Health. So what we do, and I say we, myself and the Board of Selectmen, we merge all of the departments that fall under the Board of Selectmen, and that's one recommendation to the Finance Committee, much like the library trustees make their recommendations to the Finance Committee, the Board of Health and Recreation Commission make their recommendation. Ultimately, the Board of Selectmen has no purview over the Recreation Commission's budget, and they have no purview over the library trustees' budget. That's all a function of the Finance Committee. So what I'm trying to say is all budgets ultimately go to the Finance Committee for a final immersion to go to town meeting.
Are the wages included in the big book?
Yeah, so the wages are included in my recommendation to the Finance Committee and to the Board of Selectmen. My recommendation has all of the wages in it. And so you can go position by position, title by title to look at what the recommendation is for the upcoming fiscal year and what the previous salary or wage was for that position. And that's reviewed by the Board of Selectmen for those departments that fall under the Board of Selectmen. And that's also reviewed by the Finance Committee for all positions here in town. And then I think Selectman Matera, you were the one that really pressed the wages to be included in the annual report. So the wages are included in the town manager's budget recommendation and in the annual report. So it's already in two different locations as it currently exists. I think that collectively there was a feeling that did we have to include it a third time?
Are there other communities that how do other communities handle it? Clearly the information is available to the public, but anytime you take information away from a particular place, right, I think, you kind of run the risk of people saying, why can't I see this anymore? Even though they can see it in 2 other places, or they can always, what do other communities do? Or is that sort of unprecedented to include it or not include it, or what's the?
I can't speak for other communities. I know that Nick Ensko, I think he used to be a finance committee member, I believe, in Bellingham. And he had said that there was a period of time that Bellingham would include a similar report, and they stopped that like 5-6 years ago as well. I don't know, honestly, what every community does. I guess if I took a poll, I'd probably say we were in the minority of communities that presented individual salaries at town meeting.
Yeah, and I do, I can see both sides of this for sure. I think the thing that I struggle with most is, right, because the people, and I mean they're public positions, right? So obviously their salaries are public information. They're in the big book. They're available. They're knowable. They're findable. They're debatable. So I think that's that it's just a question of how many places do we put it, and I don't know. Steve, I know it's something we've done historically. Do you feel like it's too hard for people to find in the big book, or it's just not as conducive, or what's your?
This year, it's not shared. It's not available. So you're asking people to walk into a meeting that you have only the warrant questions posted. We never posted the operational budget. It was never online. So you're going to hand people a 45-page, molded together document. And within that, we move a lot of things around. For instance, finance department, there's a big change in the finance department, but you're not sharing wages. So you could give somebody $100,000 raise really at one singular person, and people have no way to see that prior to the meeting. So,
Is that true?
You're asking me if it's true?
No, Derek, sorry, maybe I'm cutting out.
Is it true? No. So in the budget that's submitted through the finance committee report, so the report has a breakdown of every operational line item, and it also has a breakdown of each department's wages line item. So, for example, we'll pick on the Board of Selectmen's wages account. It'll show a variance of 2.5%, right? So that's in the aggregate, that's 3 positions. That's my position, that's Sandy's position, that's Paul's position. So I guess the question that Steve posed, if somebody got a $100,000 increase, that would show a variance in the report itself of, I'm going to take a guess here, like 35%. And so town meeting members could ask the question, why is the Board of Selectmen wages account have a variance of 35% where every other department has a variance of, say, 3%? What's going on here? So that's one item. And the other item too is at the end of the day, town meeting does not vote on individual salaries. They don't vote on my salary individually. They don't vote on the chief's salary. So, if they knew the chief made X amount of dollars and they wanted to cut his salary, there is no legal way to cut the chief's salary. They'd have to cut the police department wages salary, but how if the chief wants to, we'll call it $100,000, has to move $100,000 from his wages salary, he would ultimately just lay off a police officer. So I guess what value does it have by showing people's individual salaries when the variance is already included in the report that they're given, and 2, there is no mechanism for them to go after a specific employee, which quite frankly, if that was the case, I don't think anybody would ever want to be a public employee if they're going to be attacked at town meeting.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that aspect of it. I've never frankly been comfortable with discussing an individual municipal employee's salary or compensation directly in a public meeting. I think that that's a very unfortunate and uncomfortable position. So, no, my perspective, certainly I'm of the mindset that if it shows up in that line item as wages and salary and as a line item, then that's plenty for people to debate. They don't necessarily need to be targeting an individual, which I know has happened in the past, and I don't think that's a good look for anybody. But okay, we can. This is a great point, Steve. I think it's something we need to be explicit about and thoughtful and intentional about. It's probably worth revisiting or having conversations with Paul and FinCom to make sure we understand what their thoughts are as well. I'm with you, Steve. I don't necessarily subscribe to it's their job, not ours, right? Like we're all in this together. So we're the ones that catch the heat when something doesn't show up that people expect, right, Steve? People aren't saying to you, oh, it's okay, Steve, because this is FinCom's decision. Like that's not how it goes. So I share the responsibility of this, with you and with Maureen and with our partners over at FinCom.
Yeah, I mean, historically, FinCom doesn't own the budget. The Board of Selectmen own the budget. It's not FinCom's baby. I mean, yes, we did, when I first came on the board, we modified where RecCom was going to present their budget. They present to us, but they also present to FinCom. But ultimately, we own the budget. It's not, if we keep delegating our authority, I mean, gee, we'll just be a figurehead board. If we're going to delegate our fiduciary responsibilities to FinCom, what are you going to do? You need us for road races and what? Fireworks, 6,000 a year for fireworks? I mean, what else are you going to need the Board of Selectmen for?
Why don't we, keep talking about this, do a little more thinking. We can, reflect on the points you've made, Steve, and talk about what the implications are, what the alternatives are, and if there's a decision to be made or a discussion to be had, then let's make sure we have it. We've obviously got some time between now and the next town meeting to think about these kinds of things and to work with FinCom to affect any changes that we think or we feel strongly about that we need to influence. Okay, anything else? All right, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn the Selectmen's meeting. Maureen Winnell, aye.
Second the motion, Stephen Mattelli and I.
Brett Simus, aye. Unanimous action. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah.
Good night.